Hello, welcome to Continental Prime, the headlines for this hour. Former South African veterans appear in court for holding two government ministers hostage. Ethiopian government and Tigray rebels accuse each other of carrying out attacks on civilians. Cape Verde's new president promises to work with center-right prime minister. Details in a bit. For viewers in Africa and around the world, this is Continental Prime. I'm Sulaiman Alede. The news begins in South Africa, where a group of over 50 former MK veterans accused of holding two government ministers hostage appeared in a Pretoria court today. The men were arrested after a meeting with government officials turned sour. Their bail application was meant to begin today, but was postponed to Tuesday after the state failed to convince the court that the case should be postponed for 7 days. The group is facing 5 charges of kidnapping. Joining me now to unpack this story is South African journalist and editor Diane Hawker. Diane, good to see you again. And well, the state wanted the case to be postponed for a week. What was the rationale behind this?
Good evening, Suleiman, and good evening as well to the viewers. Well, the state had actually said that the reason that the case should be postponed was because they were allegedly struggling to actually verify the addresses and personal information of the accused. This is because the different Mkonto veterans wanted to actually apply for bail, and the state was saying that if the court is to allow them to have bail, they need to know that the addresses that they supplied would actually be the correct addresses. However, the lawyers for the 53 accused actually came forth and they said that the state had enough time. We know that this incident took place on Thursday night and they will remain behind bars on Friday. There was also the weekend that could have been used to verify addresses, and the court agreed that it would have been too long a time frame, in fact, to then add an additional 7 days on top of that to be able to actually verify the addresses of these men.
So now the case is expected to go on tomorrow. So what are we likely to see happen?
Indeed. So what we're likely to see happen is a full bail application being made by the lawyers representing the group. We know that one of the lawyers is quite a renowned lawyer in South Africa and one who's appeared on your TV screens as well, Advocate Dali Mpofu. You might recall him from the Jacob Zuma trial, in fact, and he's also representing these military veterans. He is arguing that they should, in fact, be released on bail, that they're not facing serious charges and they don't in fact have any intention of running away. The state will also then have a counter argument as to whether they believe that these people should be kept in custody, and if there is a dispute over whether they should be released or not, then we're likely to also hear some preliminary evidence in the case. Often that evidence is led by an investigating officer, and the court will have to then make a decision on whether it is worth keeping all or some of these people behind bars.
Well, anyway, you know, the incident which the two ministers were held hostage was quite alarming. Has the government said anything apart from the case which is going to court tomorrow?
Yes, absolutely. You know, the viewers might recall that, you know, last week this incident took place in the late hours of the evening as a result of a meeting that was being held between the Minister of Defense and a minister in the presidency. And they were actually discussing with the military veterans a way forward. The military veterans, many of them say that they are former liberation fighters, so they would have been members of the African Congress before it came to power, and that in fact that they believe that the ANC has left them in the trenches, as it were, by not actually ensuring that they are properly compensated. The Minister of Defense, who's actually our former Speaker of Parliament, has now said that she wants to investigate what is going on within her own department. She recently took over in this department, and she says there's a need to look into the funds that are available. This is Minister Thandi Modise. There are funds available for military veterans to see why it is that there are some military veterans who believe that they are still in need of compensation. And this is actually because the government has made a number of promises to the military veterans about compensation over time, saying that they would compensate them with housing, transport allowances, access to medical care at a reasonable rate, and various other things that have been made after the Department of Military Veterans was actually formulated.
Well, I spoke last week with one of the key veterans, and he said the issue is about compensation, as you highlighted. Well, this case now, has it actually taken off the shine of their initial demands?
I don't believe so. I think it's actually put more of a spotlight on their initial demands. The issue of compensation, I think, is one that is not entirely resolved. As I mentioned, there are various issues, but the military veterans are also saying that there is some cash compensation which is owed to them. They're also disputing some of the numbers which the government has as to how many people have actually been compensated, saying that government is claiming that more people have been compensated than actually have been. So it's definitely put more of a spotlight on it, particularly since outside court there were a number of veterans who were actually protesting and obviously using that media opportunity to put their case forward more strongly. So I think what we will see, considering that the minister has said she will investigate this further, is there's likely to be some kind of feedback from government's perspective, actually saying how they will resolve this, because it was obviously quite an embarrassing situation to have ministers held captive over an issue that the veterans say they've been discussing for a long time. They even said that they've discussed the issue with the president, and that was part of the reason why they were reluctant to leave the meeting, because they felt that they were going over the same points over and over again, with government actually knowing what it is that they are asking for.
Diane Hawker, many thanks for unpacking this for us. Now, staying in the region, an official in Mozambique's northern province of Cabo Delgado has linked insurgents operating there to drug trafficking following the reported seizure of narcotics in their former bases. A spokesperson of the provincial prosecutor, Angelo Suerta, made the comments after government forces seized 250 kilograms of narcotics, including 28 kilos of heroin and 24 kilos of cocaine in areas previously controlled by the militants. Suerta says the heroin was seized by the defense and security forces in one of the buildings occupied by the jihadists. No details were offered on the place and date of the seizure. Now, all schools in Eswatini were shut on Monday after the government announced that they would close indefinitely. The closure comes after students led the latest round of pro-democracy protests, including transport workers and street vendors. For more than 2 weeks, they have been staging demonstrations in schools across the small kingdom, leading to the army being deployed to at least 8 state departments. Among the complaints are worsening levels of unemployment and poverty, and there is criticism that the government is unresponsive, fueling calls for democratic reform. Now, from the south, let's head to the east of the continent, where residents and officials say there have been airstrikes on the city of Mekelle, the capital of Ethiopia's Tigray region. Federal forces have been fighting the Tigray People's Liberation Front in the country's north for nearly a year. In the first strike on Mekelle's outskirts, 3 civilians were killed and dozens were wounded. The second airstrike hit a busy public market and dozens were injured. The Ethiopian government has denied carrying out the reported bombardment. The Meantime, the Ethiopian government has accused the Tigray People's Liberation Front of being behind recent attacks that have killed 30 civilians. In its latest statement, the government says the TPLF targeted areas in Amara and Afar region states, which both border Tigray, in unwarranted attacks against innocent civilians. The conflict between the TPLF, which the government regards as a terrorist organization, and Ethiopian federal forces is now nearly a year old. In neighboring Sudan, protesters in the capital Khartoum were dispersed with tear gas as they gathered for a third day outside Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok. Khartoum state authorities said riot police repelled the pro-army agitators to prevent an attempted assault on the seat of government. Hamdok, who gathered his cabinet for an urgent meeting, has called the recent unrest the worst and most dangerous crisis of the country's two-year transition since the fall of hardline ruler Omar al-Bashir. The protesters are calling for the dissolution of Sudan's post-dictatorship interim government. The main civilian faction has called for a counter-protest on Thursday. Despite a peace deal in 2018, subnational violence continues to ravage parts of South Sudan. In Tambura, western Equatoria, ongoing attacks by armed groups has led to innocent civilians being killed or injured. Properties have been destroyed while tens of thousands are displaced. But the United Nations mission in South Sudan has established a temporary base to reduce tensions, protect civilians, and restore stability. A significant lack of healthcare and a dramatic rise in malnutrition in the camps is another life-threatening factor that they have to contend with.
They have all collected the drugs, and they have stolen the drugs, and they destroy everything in hospital, especially in wards, female, pediatric, male ward, laboratory, and maternity. Everything they have stolen it. Machine like a microscope, they have all destroyed. HIV drugs, they have all destroyed. Now we are facing challenges because now, especially now, this is a really time for war. We were dying, nothing like drugs. Where are we going to get the drugs? The child can suffer from malaria. There is no anti-malaria, nothing to be helped with the child. We don't have outpatient here. We were depending very far. If somebody now died here, somebody is unconscious, how will you help? You go night there, you don't go because the security is not good. So also we need OTP for the children, and also has malnourished children. In OTP, you send the children from OTP to the stabilization center, but here we don't have now. Everything has been destroyed, so it is very difficult.
Currently, we can do what we can afford because we don't have all the equipment, like the laboratory for blood transfusion. They use the laboratory to screen and then drain the blood for the patient. Our laboratory equipment were all destroyed. Currently, what we do here in terms of lab is only the malaria rapid diagnostic test. For referral, this is very, very difficult for us because we have an ambulance, but the ambulance can't move from here to Yambio to refer a patient because of the insecurity on the road.
The Immigration Department says it rescued 6 Eritreans who were being trafficked to the East African country in Uganda. The agency on Monday said the victims were rescued in the eastern Uganda district of Jinja while en route to the capital Kampala from neighboring Kenya. The Immigration Department says the 6 comprise 5 males and a female, adding that they don't speak English. On Monday in Central Africa, the Democratic Republic of the Congo has accused Rwanda forces of incursion into 6 villages in northeastern DRC. A spokesperson for the DRC army, Julian Njike, said there was an exchange of gunfire between the FARDC and elements of the Rwanda Defense Forces in North Kivu province. Njike accused the Rwandan military of occupying 6 villages on the Congolese territory before being forced to turn back, thanks to the arrival of reinforcements from soldiers on the spot. In response, Rwanda ambassador to the DRC, Vincent Karega, denied the accusations, saying Rwanda security forces were pursuing fraudsters who choose to run to the DRC. Now, in West Africa, Cape Verde's Jose Maria Neves has vowed to work together with his center-right prime minister after winning Sunday's presidential election, where he took 52% of the votes. The leftist Neves defeated his main rival, Carlos Alberto Veiga, who got 42% of the vote. Mr. Veiga was the candidate of the party of outgoing President Jorge Carlos Fonseca. He acknowledged his defeat during a press conference and congratulated Mr. Neves. Earlier, we spoke to Paul Ejime, a member of the ECOWAS Observer Group for the Cape Verde election, on the outcome of the polls.
Let's say that there is no perfect election, but this one has passed peacefully, and then will be scored in terms of credibility or transparency very highly, because results were known hours after the election. The election ended around officially by 6 p.m. their time. But in a few hours, the results were already coming out. The lessons there are, one, the fact that there is not much that money is not played up. Candidates, for instance, are not required to pay any amount as fees or deposits. In fact, they are given money for the votes, number of votes they have received. So that clears it. So those things, those areas that weaponize corruption and all the frauds are not there. That is one. Two, they have simplified them. They are still getting to the point of having their registration cards. But what they have done, they have allowed voters to vote with their ID cards. So technology is there. And then they also have a place where you call the database, where the tablets, where the technology is high, that monitors everything that is going on and helps the Electoral Commission to track data and process it in real time. Voter apathy is one thing that they need to talk about to encourage citizens to see for participation. Women participate, but there is no representation. I mean, they are far ahead of other countries in terms of women participation.
In Nigeria, the federal government has met with high-level officials from the United States government. The meeting between Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Jeffrey Onyema, and a delegation led by the U.S. Deputy National Security Advisor, John Feiner, was held at Abuja's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Onyema told reporters after the meeting that a whole range of issues, including Nigeria's COVID-19 vaccination campaign, the country's growing democracy, secessionist agitations, and security challenges were discussed.
We discussed a large number of issues. We had excellent and very fruitful discussions that really looked at all the various areas of cooperation and engagement between Nigeria and the United States of America. We talked about the COVID situation, and in this context, the U.S. has been extremely generous and has just very recently, last week, provided, again, vaccines to Nigeria, Pfizer and other vaccines, over 3.5 million that were delivered. And I pointed out on behalf of the government of Nigeria how grateful we are to the U.S. government for this generosity. We talked, of course, about the security situation in the country, banditry, the Boko Haram, the secessionist movements and other acts and challenges to insecurity, including the Gulf of Guinea, and how we can cooperate with the United States in addressing some of those issues, in fact, all of those issues, while acknowledging the tremendous support and cooperation that we have received from the U.S. In the area of security, recent delivery of the Super Tucanos, the A-29 fighters.
It does speak to the enormous agenda that our two countries share. You heard that we spoke about the pandemic and the delivery of vaccines, and now turning to the next phase of this, which is actually making sure those vaccines are administered and get into people's arms, which is something we very much want to support, as we do the climate agenda in the run-up to Glasgow, and we have welcomed Nigeria's commitment to increase its ambition when it comes to emissions and climate change, and urge that to continue going forward. The security issues obviously are paramount, whether it's terrorism or piracy or anything else related to the security situation in this country that the United States can support. You mentioned democracy. The president is very much looking forward to convening the Summit for Democracy in December. A big pillar of this is going to be obviously issues related to elections, related to corruption, and we discussed that agenda here as well. What it really underscores is that there are no significant issues on our mutual agenda that can be addressed without working together, and so we are committed to continuing.
10 bandits have been killed after a gun battle with a joint team of security forces in Giwa local government area of Nigeria's northwestern Kaduna state. A statement on Monday by the State Commissioner for Internal Security and Home Affairs, Samuel Arua, says that the troops encountered the heavily armed bandits in the outskirts of Fatika and engaged them in a gun battle. The statement says a camp belonging to the bandits was burnt down during the raid. The items recovered by the security operatives include several motorcycles, a revolver, mobile phones and torchlights, while a kidnapped victim was also rescued. Now, still on the security situation in northern Nigeria, suspected armed bandits have attacked Goroyo Market in Goroyo local government area of the northwestern Sokoto state. Sources in the village say the assailants attacked the market in large numbers on Sunday night, shooting sporadically and killing several people. The actual number of casualties is yet to be determined. This is the third time in 2 weeks bandits have attacked a village market in that state. Now, staying in Nigeria, the Inspector General of Police, Usman Alkali Baba, has ordered the investigation of police personnel seen extorting and assaulting travelers in southwestern state of Kogi. In the viral video leading to the investigation, a police officer was seen assaulting a passenger and allegedly demanding 25,000 naira. In response, Frank Mba says the Inspector General of Police specifically directed the Kogi State Police Command to carry out a thorough probe into the incident. He also called for calm, assuring the people that justice will be done for the police assault and extortion victims. Now, in neighboring Niger, an attack on a police post in the country's frontier zone with Burkina Faso has left 3 police officers dead and wounded 7 others. An elected official who confirmed the attack on Monday says it happened on a border checkpoint at Petekole. The official says the attackers burnt 2 vehicles and took away their weapons. The Islamic State frequently targets the flashpoint area in the Greater Sahara and the Al-Qaeda affiliated group to support Islam and Muslims. Since 2017, militant groups have rocked the Tilaberi region, a vast area covering 100,000 square kilometers near the borders of Mali and Burkina Faso. In North Africa, prominent Egyptian activist Alaa Abdel Fattah and 2 others went on trial today on charges of spreading fake news after being in detention for more than 2 years. Abdel Fattah, blogger Mohammed Ibrahim, and lawyer Mohammed Al-Bakir appeared before a Cairo misdemeanor court where charges were read. The three have been detained since September of 2019. The next hearing was set for November 1 to allow the prosecution and defense to enter pleas. You're watching Continental Prime. Coming up, South Africa's drugs regulator withholds approval for emergency use of Russia's Sputnik V COVID-19 vaccine owing to safety concerns. We'll have more on this and other stories when we return. Well, if you just joined us, you're welcome. You're watching Continental Prime here on News Central Television, coming to you live from Nigeria's economic capital, Lagos. Now, the Parliament of the Economic Community of West African States has called for far-reaching changes in the sub-region. Speaker of the Parliament, Sidi Mohamed Tunis, made a call at the opening ceremony of the second extraordinary session in Winnipeg, Ghana, saying the region needs fundamental and far-reaching reforms in every sector. Tunis also expressed worry at the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the economies of member states, saying it has plunged several states into economic depression. He also criticized the current vaccination rates among member states, saying the figures are abysmally low.
Our region requires fundamental changes in every area, from civil liberties, the rule of law, accountability and transparent governance, peace and security, as well as economic development. We continue to examine the COVID-19 pandemic more closely, and as a parliament, we are very concerned about our region falling deeper into recession because of the pandemic, which would ultimately erase the progress we have made over the past 2 decades. As it stands, the third wave of the pandemic seems to be stabilizing across our states, but cases are still high, with WAHO reporting a total of 649,000 cases across the region as of 14th October 2021. The percentage of African population fully vaccinated, which is a little over 2.47%, according to the Africa Center for Disease Control, is appallingly low compared to those unvaccinated. Much as the unavailability of the vaccine is an issue to consider, we also find as the conspiracy theories that have created fear of the vaccine in our population.
Not our coverage of the coronavirus across the continent. Let's start from South Africa, where the country's drugs regulator says it is not approving an emergency use of Russia's Sputnik V COVID-19 shot for now, citing concerns about its safety for people at risk of HIV. Now, the regulator said on Monday that it has asked for data demonstrating Sputnik V was safe in settings with the HIV prevalence and that it had not received enough to establish this. South Africa has one of the world's highest HIV burdens. In addition, some studies have suggested that vaccines using the 85 vector can lead to higher susceptibility to HIV in men. Now, in Burundi, the people are divided on whether or not to get vaccinated against COVID-19. One opposition politician even dismisses the expected vaccines as a fad, as the government says it expects to receive the doses in a matter of weeks. Burundi is one of the last 3 countries in the world to start inoculating its population against COVID-19.
Ça ne pose aucun problème. Et puis, je ne pense pas qu'on devrait avoir cet engouement pour le vaccin anti-Covid lorsqu'on n'a pas manifesté cela avec Ebola ou avec d'autres calamités, je dirais, sanitaires sur le continent. Bon, de toute façon, le manque d'engagement même du gouvernement dire qu'il va de la responsabilité de celui qui se fait vacciner, là vous comprendrez que quand même il y a lieu de se poser mille et une questions. D'où j'encouragerais plutôt à ce qu'on intensifie la campagne de sensibilisation pour que chacun soit conscient que quand même le danger est bel et bien là. Deuxièmement, disponibiliser les produits parce que c'est une maladie qui est quand même curable.
numva nta muntu reka kuza kugwakira kubera yuko ikana akamaro kanini cyane gose makino giye kubera corona ana ko iguma ifata abantu benshi bamwe bagapfa abandi bagasubira mu gihe ariko nk'uko rukinga abantu ntibosubira gufashwa na corona cyo kiza kugira ngo umuntu aje kwikingiza je numva vraiment go rukinga no gwakira
ego twarumvise kuri urucanco rwa covid ruri mu gushika mu Burundi kandi mubazoja kwicandagisha nk'abandimo kuko urucanco ari gwiza ku magara y'abantu.
COVID-19 ruri mu kuza kubwiwanje mbona yuko ntazokwakira ubwo rucanco canke nkuzogenda kubwitesha kubera numvise yuko nubwo kwiteza ubwo rucanco umugwaye canke uhuye n'umuntu arwara arashobora kurukwanduza. Ego.
Kenya's Ministry of Health says 33 people contracted COVID-19 from a sample size of 3,530 tests in the last 24 hours. This puts the current positivity rate from the virus at 0.9%, with totally confirmed positive cases rising to more than 252,000 and cumulative tests so far conducted at 2.6 million. From the cases, the youngest is a 2-month-old child and the oldest is 98 years. The Health Ministry says only one COVID-19 related death was recorded in the last 24 hours, pushing the country's cumulative fatalities to 5,224. The Republic of Congo has announced a 45-day program to battle a third coronavirus wave, including vaccinating at least 750,000 people. At a ceremony to launch the program, Prime Minister Anatole Macron notes that the Central African country has seen a sharp rise in COVID-19 deaths this month. The Prime Minister noted that 32 deaths were recorded in the first 2 weeks of this month, far greater than the monthly average since the pandemic's start. He announced other measures to curb the spread of the virus, such as greater surveillance and sensitization, social distancing, and wearing face masks in public places. According to the Nigeria Center for Disease Control data on Monday, let's go to West Africa, where 33 patients died of COVID-19 complications on Sunday. Now, the NCDC also reported 125 new cases from 10 states and the Federal Capital Territory. The figures show the number of confirmed cases currently stands at 209,298, while the death toll from the virus is 2,837. In the meantime, the NCDC has launched the National Manual on Infection Prevention and Control to ensure Nigerians receive safe care and healthcare workers are protected as they provide care. The Public Health Agency says the manual, which is available to the public on its website, contains guidelines on how to establish IPC programs, implement standard and transmission-based precautions, administrative controls in IPC, and other essential aspects of infection control in healthcare. Well, still ahead, former U.S. Secretary of State Colin Powell has died of COVID-19 complications at the age of 84. We'll bring you more on that when we return. Join us again. French President Emmanuel Macron has announced moves, though, to overhaul the country's justice system, criticized for being too slow and too lax. In a speech at the opening of a week-long Forum on Justice Reform. Macron, however, spoke against naming public officials in a case regarding a crisis that is still ongoing, describing it as far from appeasing. He was referring to, without explicitly mentioning, former Health Minister Agnes Buzyn, who was charged over her handling of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Pour renforcer la justice est donc un combat essentiel, et je pèse mes mots, un combat de civilisation. On doit la réformer, la moderniser, chercher à renforcer ce pacte civique que j'évoquais entre la nation et sa justice, mais il faut toujours la défendre. C'est le devoir de chaque citoyen. Une démocratie où on laisse la défiance s'installer, la justice être attaquée, est une démocratie qui sape ses propres fondements, que nous vivons depuis plusieurs décennies et qui tente à s'accélérer. Et celui, principalement, dois-je dire, sous l'influence des pays anglo-saxons, de la pénalisation des relations sociales. Fonctionnaires, médecins, scientifiques, directrices et directeurs d'écoles, élus. Ce mouvement, orchestré par des citoyens souvent devenus procureurs, a gagné de plus en plus de champs de nos relations sociales. Quand des responsables, ministres, fonctionnaires, élus, se trouvent cités dans une procédure pour une crise qui est encore en cours, nous sommes loin de l'apaisement et de l'équilibre que j'évoquais précédemment. Et la situation que nous sommes en train de vivre collectivement pose une question qui peut venir mettre en tension l'autorité judiciaire.
A former Secretary of State of the United States, Colin Powell, has died of COVID-19 complications at the age of 84. The Republican was a former top military officer who rose to become the first African-American Secretary of State in 2000 under George W. Bush. His family announced his death, which described him as a remarkable and loving husband, father, grandfather, and a great American. Current Secretary of State Antony Blinken honored Powell in a speech from the State Department.
Dedicated his extraordinary life to public service because he never stopped believing in America. And we believe in America in no small part because it helped produce someone like Colin Powell. He gave the State Department the very best of his leadership, his experience, his patriotism. He gave us his decency, and the State Department loved him for it. He was a man of ideas, but he wasn't ideological. He was constantly listening, learning, adapting. He could admit mistakes. It was just another example of his integrity. As is probably evident by now, I was a huge admirer of Secretary Powell's. I always will be.
Other news, an estimated 1.19 million people used Kenya's standard gauge railway train in the first 8 months to August as passenger numbers returned to pre-COVID-19 levels. The figures released on Monday by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics indicate an increase of 139% from more than 498,000 in the same period in 2020. KNBS says the surge in passengers follows the easing of COVID-19 restrictions in Kenya amid the high vaccination of citizens. The statistics office adds that the freight service hauled 3.4 million tons of cargo in the first 8 months of 2021, up from 3 million in the same period in 2020. Lekon Onabanjo has the rest of the business news.
Hello and welcome to Business News on NC Continental Prime. I am Lekon Onabanjo. Nigeria's Tier 1 bank, Access Bank PLC, has completed the acquisition of the majority equity stake in Botswana's fifth largest bank, African Banking Corporation of Botswana, called Bank ABC Botswana Limited. According to papers filed at the Nigerian Exchange, Access Bank stated that it has completed acquisition of 78.15% in Bank ABC Botswana. Bank ABC Botswana, a well-capitalized bank poised for growth, is expected to form part of Access Bank's nexus for trade and payments in Southern Africa and broader commercial trade region. Let's also tell you that Zimbabweans are considering more renewable energy uptake in rural areas. The nation says this is an opportunity to increase access to electricity in the country's rural communities. Currently, 83% of urban households have access to electricity versus 13% of rural households. Overall, more than 60% of the population still rely on solid biomass fuel for thermal needs and have no access to clean energy sources. About 20% of urban households use wood as the main cooking fuel because of the unreliability of electricity supply and financial constraints. The 2019 National Renewable Energy Policy identifies renewable energy as a vehicle for providing electricity to millions of households. ESCOM has filed an urgent application against the National Energy Regulator of South Africa, called NERSA, in the Gauteng High Court. The suit is meant to prevent a situation where ESCOM will not be able to generate any revenue from April 1 next year because 50% of the voting members opposed to the tariff review. The casting of votes came from the acting chair, Advocate Fungai Sibanda, who tipped the scale towards the rejection of ESCOM's latest tariff application in favor of a tariff determination process that is simply incapable of lawful completion in time for March 15. And elsewhere, Tanzania's national carrier, Air Tanzania, is set to receive 5 more aircraft after the government made a down payment of $258.7 million for the purchase, expected to be delivered before the end of 2023. The planes will thus raise Air Tanzania's current fleet size to 16. In addition, the 2 new Airbus A220-300s received earlier this month. The airline's fleet comprises 2 Boeing 787-8 Dreamliners, 2 other Airbus A220-300s, and 5 Bombardier Q400-8 400s. Acquisition of the 2 new Airbuses birthed the airline's efforts to introduce more international flights. Starting November this year, the airline will begin direct flights to Nairobi, Bujumbura, and Lubumbashi. And that's all on business news for today. NC Continental Prime continues in a bit. Do stay with us. I am Nikon Onobanjo.
Well, many thanks, Lekon. Now, Nigerians have been talking online for 2 days to the first anniversary of NSAS shooting at Lekki Tollgate in Lagos. For some of what they say and other trending stories, let's go to Sheon Bankole.
Yes, it's a new week and we are pumped to have you on board with us. Welcome to today's episode of NC Trends. I am Sheon Bankole. Now, with only 2 days to the October 20, 2020 NSAS protest anniversary, there have been different conversations online. Now, Nigerian tweets have revisited the issue of fund mismanagement by the feminist coalition FEMCO, who received funds on behalf of NSAS protesters, but were reported to have withdrawn 51,000 worth of Bitcoin from the donation account. Wow. Now, despite the detailed analysis published by FEMCO in March 2021, stating how every penny was spent, sweeps are still calling them out for lack of accountability. While some people are saying that they should give us a forensic audit, some others insist that this is the wrong time to call FEMCO out, as it will distract us from the NSAS memorial narrative. Thus, there's been a call for young people to occupy Lekki Tollgate on Wednesday morning to march against injustice and demand justice for victims of the massacre. Well, here are some tweets on that. Edith C. F. Young has championed the conversation, and he says that since FEMCO stopped supporting NSAS, which of you bright boys have stood up? These women ran the best organized citizen engagement in my lifetime. What is the need for me? Ensuring that in the future, when Nigeria needs people to stand up, they won't be hounded into silence. Well, here's another comment from Damilari Adenola. He says that NSAS posters have taken over Lekki environs. Young people are bracing for the memorial. Nothing can stop the revolutionary consciousness of young people that the government is not working for the people, but for their personal needs. Hashtag Occupy Lekki Tollgate. All right, David says, okay, I admit I am petty and vindictive, but only for noble causes and only against useless people who would trample others to progress. Has Eziti asked after those who lost their jobs at Circle Mall or at Adeniro Ogusoya shopping complex. Okoaya Femco is saying that Eziti is Femco's husband. Well, mixed reactions have followed the trending video of a man who stormed his ex-girlfriend's wedding to display his level of wealth and affluence. According to Afam Deluxo on Twitter, the lady broke up with him because he was not financially buoyant. So he went to work, he made it, and he stormed our wedding uninvited to shut it down. Well, if you were the lady, what will you do? And of course, as a man, can you flex on your ex and go and show off at a wedding this way? Well, here are some comments from Instagram users. Brooke Bolatito says, this is upsetting on her own wedding day. Well, me, I'll call security guards to take him out. Though. What about you? Will you do this if your ex comes to your wedding? Will you call security guards or you enjoy the money? Well, Fluffy Diva Cake says, if not me, after spraying the money and showing off, I will send my boys to pick every penny and off we go. Life is good. All right, Amaka Abel says, so she got her dream man, one, and then she got her ex's money. A queen is stand. Finally, Nigerian music icon Tuface Idibia has a message for certain people. The music star, who is known for abstaining from social media drama, went on a surprising rant on Insta story this morning. He wrote, when you allow some people access to you, no shaking. Your disrespect only shows who you are. Don't be shy. Enjoy what you hope to enjoy. We shall meet in front. He also continued saying, I will never change who I am for anything or anybody. Just enjoy the privilege of having access to God now. It shall be well. No fee make me crazy. It no go happen. Well, it is unclear who the messages are meant for, but it may be connected to the recent drama in his marriage and in his family. Here are some comments from his fans on Instagram. This one says, at official to Baba and his family need a vacation without disclosing their whereabouts. I think I agree with that one. They need time out to breathe. You guys should let them be. The internet is a lot these days, man. Right? Inumido says, use this as a motivation and find a reason to understand that one woman is enough. It is irresponsible having kids with women you don't intend to marry. It will always come back to haunt you at some point. Peace of mind is underrated. And that's on period. All right, this comment says, I no go sipu my mouth for this matter because you too, Baba, categorically asked us to mind our business. So settle your problems in your house. All right, that's it on NC Trends today. Remember to follow us across social media at News Central TV to share your thoughts and connect with us on YouTube for more videos and back-to-back updates. Thank you for watching NC Trends.